Week 5 kicked off on Thursday Night Football, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the rest of the running backs for week number 5. We're going to be discussing my top 40 running back rankings and tiers for week number 5 of the 2025 fantasy football season. A lot of you guys might be dealing with bye weeks. Some of you guys are dealing with a lot of injuries. So in today's video, we'll hopefully be able to get past that and set our lineup and hopefully eat that W by the end of the week. Before we get on into things, though, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin in the must-start running back ones tier with Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Devon Achane, Omarion Hampton, Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, Ashton Genty, as well as Derrick Henry. Now, Christian McCaffrey was my RB1 on the week. He obviously had a fantastic showing up against the LA Rams, but since he did already play, I decided not to include anyone that has already played in today's video, meaning that Kyren Williams, he already played. You can't magically just adjust your lineup now afterwards. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs, technically the RB2, but the RB1 of today's video, going up against the Bengals in Cincinnati. Anytime you could go up against the Bengals defense, it is basically a red panty night for fantasy football. This is a wet dream matchup. Jahmyr Gibbs has been uber consistent throughout the start of the season, 4 touchdowns over the first 4 games of the season. And when you go up against the Bengals defense, great things are going to happen for you. This is going to be a game where they should be up late in the game, running the rock a ton with Jahmyr Gibbs as well as David Montgomery. So you got to feel great about Jahmyr Gibbs in your lineup this week. At number 2, we got Jonathan Taylor going up against the Las Vegas Raiders at home in Indianapolis. Now, this is a rough matchup for running backs, but Jonathan Taylor has been one of the most consistent running backs in fantasy football through the start of the season, the RB1 in both weeks 2 and week number 3. Now, he did have a bit of a stumble last week as the RB21 up against the Rams in SoFi, but that was largely because he had this huge 50-plus yard touchdown that was called back due to holding because Adonai Mitchell is a straight-up stooge. This week, hopefully that doesn't end up happening again when the offense is running as well as the Indianapolis Colts are. I get the matchup on paper might be tough, but we're not going to worry about that one bit. Next up, we got James Cook going up against the New England Patriots at home in Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. This is going to be the matchup where the Buffalo Bills wear those cool white out uniforms. It would be cool if the Dolphins rivalry uniforms weren't, as frankly, I didn't really like them that much. I wish we had a whiteout uniform, or just maybe the retro uniforms would be cooler than what we ended up wearing. But James Cook going up against the Patriots. James Cook might be the player I was most wrong about this summer. I was the most right about him last year. I banged the drum for him. I gave him the quote-unquote Suka Lamink special, the Gawk Gawk 9000. I said everyone needs to draft James Cook. He's severely underrated. The touchdowns are going to increase. But I thought this year, with the amount of snaps that he plays, how could he possibly score that many touchdowns again? And he basically kicked me directly in the nuts, as he has scored at least 1 touchdown in every single game and has scored a grand total of 5 total touchdowns through the first 4 games of the season. Going up against the Patriots defense, there's really zero reason to believe that that is going to slow down. While this isn't the best matchup on paper for a running back, James Cook has ran so well. Regardless of the matchup, you got to start him. Next up, we got Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins going up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. Now, the Miami Dolphins offense has been pretty up and down so far this season. The loss of Tyreek Hill basically just ensures that Devon Achane is going to see roughly a gazillion targets game in and game out. He's already had 2 games this season with 9+ targets. Now, while the rushing hasn't necessarily been at its best this season, he had his season high 20 rushes last week for 99 yards, 2 targets, 1 reception for 2 yards, and a touchdown as the RB17 with Tua Tagovailoa under center. Devon Achane is live any given week to be the RB1 due to the amount of receiving upside he has game in and game out. And when you're going up against the Panthers defense, I definitely do believe this could be his best game of the year. Next up, we got Omarion Hampton going up against the Washington Commanders at home in LA in SoFi. Now, Omarion Hampton has had his true coming out party over the last 2 weeks. He started off incredibly slow, but has really picked things up to another level over the last 2 weeks. RB32 to start off the season, followed by the RB53, but then Najee Harris got hurt, and now it's been wheels up RB4 and RB7 over the last 2 games, 25 plus PPR points in both games and a touchdown in both showings. I understand that the Chargers offense definitely does take a hit without Joe Alt, but if Omarion Hampton played as well as he did did last week up against the Giants. Without Joe Alt for a lot of that game, I don't think that things are going to slow down for him too much. Obviously, it sucks, right? I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, it's great that Joe Alt is hurt, because if you are an Omarion Hampton owner, you would prefer for Joe Alt to be in the game. But even without him, I think you want to be heavily relying on Hampton. This week at number 7, we got Saquon Barkley going up against the Denver Broncos. Now, Saquon Barkley has definitely not been a miss this season. He has been incredibly reliable, but he hasn't really hit that peak that I thought he would hit this season. The Philadelphia Eagles offense is very, very weird. There are games where the Philadelphia Eagles offense doesn't even have to do jack shit for them to win the game. Both Devontae Smith as well as A.J. Brown appear to be incredibly pissed off. A.J. Brown especially going to Twitter, basically tweeting out all these cryptic things like he's the Riddler, and now we'll see what ends up happening there. Maybe he wants out of Philadelphia because they just don't throw the ball, and their quarterback is a running back. Ultimately, though, Saquon Barkley is one of these guys that if you blink and the Sunday slate of games is over and Saquon Barkley has scored 35 fantasy points, is anyone shocked? The answer to that is fuck no, baby. A touchdown in every single game outside of one, and outside of that game up against the Rams where he got stymied, he has been a top 16 running back. So again, say what you want about Saquon Barkley, but if you drafted Barkley instead of some of these other guys going in the first round, you are feeling real good right now. Next up, we got Breece Hall going up against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, personally, the only thing holding me back from ranking Breece Hall even higher in a great matchup up against the Dallas Cowboys, a defense that can't stop anything, it's just the fact that he's on the Jets. And you know that there's a chance that while the Dallas Cowboys defense sucks ass, the Jets defense sucks ass, it should be a high-scoring game, that maybe the Jets offense just comes out limp dick. No Braylon Allen, though, so this should be the Breece Hall show. But it is important to note that while it should be the Breece Hall show, that doesn't guarantee that Breece Hall is going to be the only running back touching the football in this game, right? Like, I think you're going to be seeing Isaiah Davis as well in this game, so it's still probably going to lead to some frustration. But ultimately, Breece Hall has been very good this season when they've actually given him the correct amount of touches. Last week, he absolutely bulldozed the Dolphins defense, but instead they give the ball to Braylon Allen. He fumbles. Kind of fucks that game over for them. Up against the Cowboys, though, this reeks of a bounce-back spot. Next up, we got Javonte Williams going up against the Jets. Again, the Jets' defense is a complete and utter letdown this season. They bring in Aaron Glenn, this defensive-minded head coach. You're thinking, wow, the defense is going to shapeshift from last year where Robert Saleh didn't have the defense looking right, and then they fire Xerxes from 300, and things didn't go too well. But maybe now things are going to get better, and obviously things have just gotten kind of stayed the same. Javonte Williams has been a staple, low-end RB1 to high-end RB2 this season. 2 games inside of the top 5, 3 or 4 games with at least 1 touchdown, 4 total tugs on the season. Again, nothing much you have to stay here. You are obviously going to start him. At number 10, we got Ashton Genty going up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Now, last week was the true coming out party for Ashton Genty. We have kind of just said all season that, hey, while Genty is kind of fucking us over, it's not really his fault. It's more the fault of the offensive line. And you just kind of know one of these days the big game is coming. Sure, it might take a while. Sure, maybe it wouldn't even happen last week. Maybe it would take a couple more weeks, but eventually Ashton Genty is going to have that big game, and you're going to be like, thank God that I drafted him. And last week was that game. 21 carries for 138 yards, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 17 yards, 3 total touchdowns as the RB number 1. He went back to his old stance from college, and Ashton Genty is just as lethal as it gets. Again, the offensive line sucks so much cock, so it's obviously terrible for Ashton Genty, but he's the kind of guy that can run free on any defense in terms of a matchup. This one is far from ideal. The Indianapolis Colts ranked 27th in points allowed to the running back position, so, you know, you might want to pump the brakes a little bit on expecting that big of a performance again, but you know, Ashton Genty drafted him super highly. He showed us what he could do last week. I think you got to consider to keep ranking him as high as a top 12 guy. Final guy here is going to be Derrick Henry. Now, no Cooper Rush to me means they are going to force feed the ball to Derrick Henry. When you don't have Lamar Jackson and Cooper Rush is under center, you don't want to be relying heavily on Cooper Rush throwing deep piss missiles to Zay Flowers, Rashad Master Bateman, Tylan Wallace to win the game, right? You want to run the ball, establish the run. Derrick Henry has essentially bent you over a table in 3 straight games after being the RB1 in week number 1. Going up against the Texans defense has been a pretty middle of the road matchup for running backs. So I'm still going to hold out hope for Derrick Henry, but obviously at this point in the season, if you are not at least somewhat worried, I think you're kind of just brushing everything under the rug and not really critically thinking. Now we move on into the second tier at the running back position, the must-start RB2s, headlined by Travis Etienne, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, say what you want about the Jacksonville Jaguars, say what you want about Duval, say what you want about Trevor Lawrence, how the guy looks like he's blind out there throwing the ball to BTJ and Travis Hunter, but ultimately everything is just fine when the ball is given to Travis Etienne. He is still the clear RB1 in this offense, even with Baishal Tutin playing well as well. Top 14 running back in 3 of 4 games, a touchdown in all of the last 3 games. So while the Jaguars offense definitely does have a lot of warts, and all of the warts basically are the cause from Travis, I almost called him Travis Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne continues to produce. The Chiefs matchup last year for running backs was incredibly brutal. This year, there's a top 10 matchup for running backs, so I feel very good about Etienne. Next up, we got Quinshon Judkins going up against the cold-like Minnesota Vikings in London at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, Quinshon Judkins has been a top 12 running back in back-to-back games, a touchdown in both games, and while I definitely am worried about the fact that this is going to be Dylan Gabriel's first ever start in a different country, going up against the Vikings defense that is very tough for quarterbacks. This is a above average matchup for running backs, and Judkins absolutely sliced and diced his way through the Packers and the Lions defense. So while I am definitely nervous here, he should be able to do it up against the Vikings. Next up, we got I'm a scat man, bop billy bop, Cam Scatterboo going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. Last week, sadly, he did not find the end zone up against the LA Chargers. 25 carries though, very promising for his future until Tyrone Tracy returns. And even when Tracy does return, I think the keys to the backfield have been gifted to Cam Scatterboo. Cam Scatterboo has looked solid. Honestly, I thought Tyrone Tracy would just hold him off this season and he'd be a little bit disappointing, but frankly, with Tracy out of the picture now, there's really nothing to stop the Cam Scatterboo train. Top 10 matchup for running backs up against the New Orleans Saints. Jackson Dart has this offense looking incredible. So going up against the Saints defense that has more holes than some Swiss cheese, you got to feel very nice about I almost called him Cam Scatterboo this week. Final guy in this tier is going to be Rashad with 2 A's White running back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Seahawks in Seattle. Now, Rashad White has lost his job to Bucky Irving, but guess who's not going to be playing this week? It is Bucky Irving. Now, Sean Tucker did flash a couple of times last season, and I will give him the credit. He does look very good as well, but I do think the backfield will be pushed more into the favor of Rashad White, a mid-range matchup for running backs up against the Seattle Seahawks. As long as Rashad White gets the pass-catching upside that he has, he's getting some pass-catching opportunities, 5 targets last week. If he sees a similar amount this week, I see no reason as to why he couldn't potentially finish as a running back 1. Moving now into the third tier at the running back position, which is headlined by Jordan Mason. This is going to be the rest of the RB2s. Jordan Mason, Kenneth Walker, you might just get in with Rico McMillan, Rico Dowdle, J.K. Dobbins, Alvin Kamara, Woody Marks, you got a friend in me, and David Montgomery. Now, Jordan, the numbers, Mason, what do they mean? Going up against the Cleveland Browns is a real rough matchup for running backs, but I do still believe very strongly that Jordan Mason is the guy, and what happened with Xavier Scott last week is not going to be the normal in this offense, and I do believe that Jordan Mason should be fine. He should be able to bounce back. He sees a lot of touches in this offense, 16 rushes in back-to-back games. I think while the Browns' run defense is very tough, he could easily score a touchdown here. Definitely not having the highest of expectations this week, but I do think he should be in this range. The only reason why I don't have him higher, again, is because the matchup is tough. Next up, we got Kenneth Walker going up against the Buccaneers. Kenneth Walker is going to be a guy that's going to cause you for your hair to turn gray. He's going to have you pulling out your hair. You're not going to be able to sleep at night thinking about the fact that you have to start Kenneth Walker, because while he is the best running back on this team, if they are going to give Zach Charbonnet the goal line opportunities, you are going to end up incredibly frustrated every single week you have Kenneth Walker. He basically just gives you blue balls because they end up putting in Zach Charbonnet when Kenneth Walker has been doing all the work. And that is what happened last week up against the Cardinals in Arizona. But before we talk about Kenneth Walker some more and the rest of the running backs in today's video, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you receive a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you will get either $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. If you don't know how the pick'em works, it's incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the higher or the lower. If both of them hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, the payout will be higher, but they all have to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. So as we alluded to, up against the Cardinals on Thursday Night Football, Kenneth Walker has 19 carries for 81 yards. Very nice, but he doesn't score a touchdown, and he has 1 reception on 29 yards. Is this going to be the case every single week? We don't know for sure. But based on that game, there's definitely reason to be nervous. A below-average matchup for running backs has me feeling uneasy about Kenneth Walker. Next up, we got Rico Dowdle going up against the Dolphins. Anytime you could go up against the Dolphins defense, you might as well just be playing up against a toddler team, right? A JV the freshman football team, because the Dolphins defense cannot tackle. We saw what the Jets running backs did to the Dolphins. They tag teamed them. They ran a train on them. So Rico Dowdle in for Chuba Hubbard. Rico Dowdle is a guy that was very valuable in Dallas. I get that he has not really played that much with Chuba Hubbard, but with Chuba Hubbard out for the picture for at least this week up against the Dolphins defense that couldn't stop me running on him, you gotta love Mr. Dowdle this week. Next up, we got J.K. Dobbins going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Go Birds, dickhead, in Philadelphia. Last week was the worst showing so far this season out of Dobbins, but it wasn't really because J.K. Dobbins himself had a bad game. He actually ran for over 100 yards. His problem was he didn't score a touchdown. They put R.J. Harvey in late in the game because they were beating the ever-living shit out of the Cincinnati Bengals. You ever watched a UFC fight where the guy is unconscious and Herb Dean or whoever the ref is like thinking about, maybe he's thinking about the ring girl or something, and he's not paying attention, and you're watching some guy just getting fucking CTE in live time because the ref isn't ending the fight. He's just beating the shit out of someone that's unconscious. That is what it was like. That was what the Broncos were doing to the Bengals. So they didn't need J.K. Dobbins late, and R.J. Harvey got the touchdown. I don't think that will be as likely to happen here up against the Eagles. This should be a very competitive game. The Eagles defense is a top 12 matchup for running backs on a weekly basis, so J.K. Dobbins feels good in this RB2 range. Next up, we got Alvin Kamara going up against the New York Football Giants. Now, last week, people were kind of running around alleging that Alvin Kamara was dead for fantasy football. It was like that dude who wrote in and said the British are coming. I'm forgetting his name, and I feel like such a fucking idiot, Paul Revere, because I did study history in college. But, the British are coming. Alvin Kamara's finished. Hear ye, hear ye. And ultimately, he was barely outscored by Kendre Miller. Sure, Kendre Miller scored that touchdown, but this is still Alvin Kamara's backfield. Going up against the Giants defense is a great matchup for running backs, a top 5 matchup, so I think the bounce back here is inevitable for Alvin Kamara after a pretty unnoteworthy start to the season. If we're keeping it a buck with you, it doesn't really feel like Alvin Kamara is going to finish as a top 12 running back, just going to kind of be a condom wrap RB2 on your team. Next up, we got Woody Marks going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. Now, Woody Marks had a day. You ever remember those old posts by NFL on Instagram where it's like, have a day, blank player, and it was like his jersey, and it was like, oh, he ran for X amount of yards, so many touchdowns, this many receptions. They don't do that anymore because, why have fun anymore on social media? But Woody Marks, 17 for 69. Very nice. I like. 4 receptions on 5 targets for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is now looking like it's his backfield. He has kind of overtaken 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. The matchup up against the Ravens is the best for running backs. They are allowing the most points to the running back position. So while I think You know, a lot of people might be getting super overzealous on Woody Marks. They might be expecting too much and they may end up getting disappointed, but up against the Ravens defense, he was the RB6 last week. I could see it again, but again, we're ranking him a little bit lower just to, you know, subvert our expectations. Don't get too high on the Woody Marks stock. Next up, we got David Montgomery going up against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. Now, this could be a game just like what we saw with RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins last week, where maybe Gibbs gets it done early, and then Montgomery's playing cleanup late on in the game, and he could be a top 5-ish option. He was the RB2 up against the Baltimore Ravens in week number 3, followed that up by scoring 1 fucking fantasy point up against the Cleveland Browns. Last week, David Montgomery has been overtaken by Jahmyr Gibbs. This is his backfield, but if he gets his 12 to 15-ish touches up against the Bengals, that really could be a top 10 showing. Now we move on into the 4th tier. So everyone in the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd tier, there are some bad matchups, there's some good matchups, but if you have them in your lineup with all these bye weeks, you feel fine. You feel good. You feel good. But now is where there starts to be a lot more question marks as we get into the 4th tier, the high-end running back 3s. Michael Carter, Amari DiMercato, Tony Pollard, and TreVeyon Henderson. Now, Michael Carter and Amari DiMercato, they're on the exact same team, the Cardinals, going up against the Tennessee Titans. Your guess is as good as mine as to who the RB1 is on this team. Michael Carter kind of came out and alluded to the fact that he's the RB1 on the team, and then head coach Gannon came out and said that he's non-committal on the running back roles. Michael Carter might not be in line for the RB1 role as expected, according to Josh Winfus. On Twitter, Cardinals head coach John Gannon was non-committal with his running backs roles in week 5. They all have their roles. Nice. Great quote, Mr. Gannon. Ultimately, kind of feels like a toss-up here. Carter has played well when given the opportunity in the past. DiMercato looked good last week. Feels like the kind of scenario where neither guy really shines, but they both kind of do solid enough to be fine as your flex play or desperation RB2. Next up, we got Tony Pollard going up against the Arizona Cardinals, and that Titans matchup for running backs is very good, so maybe they do both end up having good games, but again, it just feels like kind of the situation where it would be stupid for me to rank one way higher than the other at this point based on all of the information that we have. Tony Pollard going up against the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, Tony Pollard he's just boring. He is just really, really fucking boring. He's going to get you 10 to 14 points, and you're going to feel okay about it. No one is going to be at the end of this week, or at the end of probably any fucking week, being like, thank God Nick told me to start Tony Pollard, because he just isn't that good. And frankly, even if he is good, which I do kind of believe he's a talented running back, the offense is so fucking bad that it's actually just handicapping him from having those big games. This is a good matchup for running backs up against the Cardinals, but his peak is heavily smashed down by the fact that the Titans offense is just limp dick. So Tony Pollard, if he finds the end zone, you'll be happy. If not, you're kind of just living in this range where it's like, whatever, I started him. Next up, we got TreVeyon Henderson going up against the Buffalo Bills. Now, last week felt like the game. This is going to be the TreVeyon Henderson coming out party. We talked about how Woody Marks had that big game. Genty had that big game. Hampton has come alive like fucking Frankenstein. And meanwhile, TreVeyon Henderson's just picking up the scraps, despite the fact that the team had fumbleitis up against the Steelers, fucking them over and losing them the game because Stevenson and Gibson can't hold on to the ball. And then we get to week 4, and it's like, okay, good matchup up against the Panthers. Let's see what you got, baby. TreVeyon Henderson season. And then they still don't give him the workload he deserves. And sure, I get there's reasons behind it. I get that he has struggled in pass protection. I get all that. But what the fuck is going on when your other running backs are just fumbling the ball left and right and you still can't give the ball to TreVeyon Henderson? It is sickening. He scored last week as the RB24. You're hoping for a touchdown. Otherwise, you are going to leave Sunday Night Football very, 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 very disappointed. This is a above middle-of-the-road matchup up against the Buffalo Bills. Now we move on into tier number 5. You thought tier number 4 was brutal. Tier number 5, I mean, if you have to start these guys, you're feeling real bad. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th tier, the mid-range RB3s. We got Chase Brown, Zach Charbonnet, Ramondre Stevenson, and RJ Harvey. Chase Brown without Joe Burrow, it is looking like Nightmare on Elm Street. It is looking like the worst possible thing that could ever happen. As someone that talked up Chase Brown all summer, I ignored that the offensive line was dick cheese because you ought to know why the offensive line was bad last year and Chase Brown was still feasting. But without Joe Burrow, with the offensive line being this bad and with Jake Browning being as bad as he is, this is just so bad. This is so bad. To the point where it's like, I don't even want to start Chase Brown. And I'm not even understanding why the expert consensus rankings every single week just has him as a top 24 running back on Fantasy Pros. It's like, do you not learn your lesson? Like, you're coming back to a guy that has fucked you over in 4 straight weeks and you're just expecting it to magically change. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Going up against the Lions is a rough matchup for running backs with a dog shit offensive line, with a guy that hasn't produced at all. He's averaging 2.3 yards per carry. So I'm sorry to everyone I told to draft Chase Brown. I was wrong, but there's so many excuses you could make because if Joe Burrow was healthy, I know he didn't play out well with Joe Burrow. I get it, but things could have gotten better even with the bad offensive line. Next up, we got Zach Charbonnet. Now, if he's just going to keep stealing touchdowns, he's going to keep moving up the rankings. But even with him getting the touchdown last week, he was still just the RB26. Now, he should have scored a second touchdown on kind of a phantom call up against Jackson Smith-Njigba. But who knows if things will go his way that way this week, because if he doesn't score, he's scoring you like 3 fucking fantasy points. Next up, we got Ramondre Stevenson, who somehow still has a job in the NFL. 5 points in 3 of 4 games. His only big game was up against the Dolphins defense that, again, like I said, with Rico Dowdle, literally couldn't stop me. So a guy like Ramondre Stevenson blows their back out, and then guys are oogling and ogling over him, fucking playing with his nutsack, playing with it. Get me Gooch. Shout out Conor McGregor. Going up against the Buffalo Bills, it's okay. Like, if Ramondre got enough touches, I'd be fine with this, right? A middle-of-the-road matchup, but probably just going to get you like 6 points, and if he could score, which is definitely possible, if this does end up being a higher scoring game, he'll be fine. But again, no one wants to start fucking Ramondre Stevenson. Same thing goes with RJ Harvey. Hallelujah, he scored last week. He scored 20 fucking fantasy points. But again, they were beating the brakes off the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals were calling uncle. They were tapping out. And, there was no ref to actually let the mercy rule be called, right? It was bad. Bad news bears up against the Eagles. That's not going to be the case. Now, RJ Harvey could bust one off, right? He had a big carry in week 1 up against the Titans. So it's possible, okay? But ultimately, you can't be ranking him much higher than this. Now we move to JCM and 9-inch Nicholas Chubb in the final tier before it's like the YOLO running backs, the low-end RB1s. I mean, RB1s. Bill, low-end RB1. I think I did the same exact thing last week, and people were like, Bill's an RB1. Low-end RB3s, we got JCM, Uncle Bill, Little Bill, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. Look, I think JCM against the Chargers, is this a good matchup? No, this is the worst matchup for running backs, but Bill is talented enough to have a good game. But when you run out a triple-headed backfield of death, which is essentially what the Washington Commanders have been rolling out at this point in the season, how can you rank him higher than this? Even if you think he has that big boom rush, he has that skill. If they're not going to commit to him, why bother me committing to him? Next up, we got 9-inch Nicholas Chubb going up against the Ravens. He got his job stolen from him, but he should still get like 10 to 15 touches, and he's a big body guy, so he could score up against a dog shit Ravens defense up against the run. Final tier here is the YOLO range. We're not even going to spend that much time talking about these guys. Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Xavier Scott, Kendre Miller, Baishal Tootin, and Sean Tucker. I will say this every week. If the team commits to Isaiah Pacheco, we will be talking about Isaiah Pacheco incredibly fondly. We'll be talking about Isaiah Pacheco as potentially like a locked and loaded RB2. This is a bad matchup up against the Jaguars on paper, and they do not commit to him. If they committed to him, we'd be happy. He scored a touchdown last week, but he still only had 7, 8, 9 touches. Not good enough. Kareem Hunt, he could score just like Isaiah Pacheco. They see a similar amount of workload. If neither of the guys score, you wish you didn't play either of them. Next up, we got Xavier Scott. Kind of a Mickey Mouse performance last week, finding that touchdown, 6 receptions on 8 targets. I highly doubt that's going to happen again, But again, with the running back position being so brutal this week with so many bye weeks, a guy like Xavier Scott actually cracks the top 40. Kendre Miller scored last week up against the Buffalo Bills. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think Kendre Miller's kind of just an insurance policy. Geico, shout out to Flo, shout out to, Mr. Discount Double Check. If something was to happen to Alvin Kamara or he gets traded, you're happy you have Kendre Miller. If nothing happens, Alvin Kamara's still on the team for the rest of the year, he doesn't get hurt, knock on wood, then Kendre Miller is just kind of a bench piece that, is forgotten about, A touchdown last week doesn't mean he's going to score again. Next up, we got Baishal Tootin, currently listed as questionable, dealing with a shoulder injury, limited on Thursday. Fantasy Pros doesn't have any report on practice on Friday, but the game is on Monday, so I would expect him to play. I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins. We've gotten our projections wrong before. Oh, I think he'll play, and then he doesn't play. Of course, again, if you take what I say about a guy playing or not, I do my research. I read through things. Seems like he's going to play, I'll say it seems like he's going to play. If it doesn't seem like it, I'll tell you it doesn't seem like it. And even if I say it seems like he's going to play, it's not a guarantee that he plays. If I say he's not going to play, unless we know definitively, it's not a guarantee that he doesn't play either. Tootin could easily score a touchdown, but with the amount of touches he gets, again, that's what you're hoping for. Final guy, Sean Tucker, the fucker, going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. He looked very good at points last season, but I still do believe this is Rachaad White's backfield without Bucky Irving. But if they do go for a more 50-50 look, you're going to be disappointed in Rachaad White, and you're probably going to be very happy if you picked up Sean Tucker. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes some money. Leave a like on today's video. It'd help me out a ton. If you all follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. See you guys later with the wide receiver rankings. I'll see you guys in the morning tomorrow, live stream before kickoff on Sunday. I love you guys so much. Thank you for everything you've given me throughout the years. Love you guys. Have a great one. As always, good boy.